in a flattering and wearable way. I'm going to be creating a sculpted luminous skin that suits all ages. I'm going to be adding definition to eyes, brows and lips in a way that really makes the most of your features, and sharing some techniques that can be used to apply any makeup look. This is your everyday makeup look, but elevated. Now to start with, I'm going to use a mask on Milena's skin. This is a Sisley Black Rose Cream Mask. This is a little bit of a cult classic, this mask. It's really beautiful, it smells divine, and it helps to smooth, plump and brighten the complexion. You can totally do this with your fingers. I'm just using this little brush so I can see exactly where the product is going, and we can make sure we don't get any in her hairline and not too much in the brows either. And give it a little bit of time to work its magic before I wipe it off with some wet cotton. This is a really lovely mask to use ahead of any big event or red carpet. It's just super easy to apply, gives beautiful results, and is easy to remove also. The mask has been on for about 5 to 10 minutes, so I'm just removing it now using some wet cotton. This is also going to make sure that any residual makeup that you may have been wearing before and any pollution or dirt is removed from the skin. Now that we've removed that mask, I'm using a little of the Clé de Peau Hydra Softening Lotion. This is such a beautiful product. It really helps the skincare that we're going to apply afterwards to perform to its maximum potential, and it's moisturizing also. Now, moisturizer is really important. I've chosen this beautiful one by Shiseido. It contains an SPF of 20 and just really helps the skin to look hydrated and plumped. I'm going to take a little bit of time to give this a good massage into the skin. That really helps to get blood circulation going so that the skin looks plumped, and also helps to aid lymphatic drainage. The eye cream that I'm going to use is the Estee Lauder Advanced Night Repair. Even though it says night repair, I love to use this in the day too. I find that it has a really smoothing effect. Now, I always use my ring finger when applying eye cream. You find that when you use your ring finger, you can't apply too much pressure so that you're not going to drag that delicate skin around the eye. And then lastly, in our steps for skincare, I'm going to be using the Laneige Lip Sleeping Mask. I find it really, really hydrating and plumping. Now moving on to primer, and I'm going to use 2 different primers for this look. I'm using the Clé de Peau Long Lasting Hydrating Veil, and I'm going to be using that on the outer parts of the face. This helps to act as a barrier between the skincare and the makeup to really lock in all that beautiful hydration. I'm using the Nano Blur Primer now. This is a really beautiful primer. It kind of mattifies the area. This helps to soften and blur the look of pores and fine lines. It's a really great one to use in the center of the face, especially where we don't want too much glow. I am using the Phytoton Nude Foundation from Sisley. This is a lovely lightweight sheer foundation. The reason I've opted for that is because I love Milena's natural freckles and I don't want to cover them. I want to keep skin looking natural, but just really perfected. I'm applying it now with a soft, fluffy brush. The reason I'm using a brush like this is because I feel like it can really work the product into the skin, and it also gives you a very quick application. Now, often people ask me why I use the palm of my hand. There is no technical reason why I use the palm rather than the back of my hand, other than it's just easier to contain the product so it doesn't drip. I want this foundation to look like a second skin. I really don't want to see it sitting on the skin. I want it to be completely undetectable. So I'm using these kind of circular movements just to buff foundation into the skin. I want foundation everywhere on the face except for the lids and under eyes, because that's where I'm going to be applying primer and also concealer, and I don't want to overload that area with product. This foundation is a perfect color match for Milena's skin, but even so, I'm going to take a little bit just down the neck and onto the chest too. Even though it's a great color match, sometimes the way that foundation reflects light is slightly different to how the skin reflects light. So it's worth bearing in mind if you're going on camera or having any photos taken. Sometimes just taking a little bit of that product down the neck helps to make everything look even more natural. I'm using the Dior Flash Perfector Concealer. This is in the shade 2N, which is a great shade for under the eye area because it contains a little bit of warmth, which means it's going to neutralize any blueness that we can find around the eye area. Now you'll see that I've applied the main bulk of the product in this little area here. That is where we get a natural dip around the eye area. So this is really the area that I want to focus on concealing and brightening. Then with the excess that's left over, I'm blending that up to the lash line. Key is to make sure you don't have too much product in this area here, which is why I'm only using the excess of what's left on the brush. The skin around the eyes is thinner than the rest of the face and it's moving constantly. So to prevent your concealer from creasing or cracking, you want to be as light-handed as possible and really just focus on brightening the areas that need it. This little area here, also taking some of that concealer into the inner corners at the top to make sure it looks balanced. A soft, fluffy brush like this is the best thing to use when you're buffing concealer under the eye area, but alternatively, you can also use fingers to just press that concealer in to the skin. Pressing rather than swiping is going to give you the most coverage and make that product sit beautifully. I'm going to put a little primer on the lids now. I am using a Natasha Denona primer, and I'm just going to smooth this on the lids ahead of our eyeliner and eyeshadow application. This is going to help hold the eyeshadow in place and also help to remove any of the natural redness that can be found on the eyelids. The reason I've opted for this primer is because it has a lovely creamy texture, which means it's not going to look drying or crepey on the skin. When I'm applying primer, I like to work from the middle of the lid. So that's where the main bulk of the product is going to go, and then I blend. It's really important to try not to get too much product in the lashes because it can be super challenging to remove. Now that we have a beautifully blank canvas, I'm going to put a little bit of sculpting back into the skin. I am using a Fenty Beauty stick contour in the shade Amber Suede. This is a really lovely realistic shade to use as contour, especially for fairer skin types or when you're looking for a really natural looking shadowing. So the places I'm applying this, under cheekbones here, a little bit in temples, just a touch on the jawline here, and exactly the same the other side. If you're wondering the perfect place to apply your contour, then you want to be feeling for your cheekbones, and where it dips in, just pressing that contour stick right in there. Contouring is all about shade and light and just tricking the eye. Popping a little bit over the top of the forehead too. I think the main thing to remember when contouring is that every face and every face shape is different. It's so important to take a step back and look at your face and at your skin and decide exactly where you want to add some sculpting. Another trick is if you sit with a light directly above you, then anywhere that the skin naturally creates shadows, it's going to show you where your bone structure is. And now I am going to blend that contour out. Because there's no powder on the skin yet, and this is going directly on top of our liquid foundation, it's so easy to blend. Just melts into the skin beautifully. I love using cream contours for this reason. They melt into the skin, giving you the super natural looking finish. I'm using a relatively firm brush for this because that's going to help us buff that product into the skin and give a lovely seamless finish. You don't want to see where that contour starts and where it finishes. It should all be really cohesive. Generally, when you're selecting your contour shade, the thing you want to look for is the color that your skin would look if it had a slight shadow over it. So we're talking about a natural looking contour being just 2 or 3 shades darker than your foundation shade to keep it looking natural. If you want a little bit more of an extreme contour, then you can go for a deeper shade. Generally, if you're trying to create a more defined contour, then I prefer to layer product. So I always like to start with quite a natural tone and then follow with a powder just to deepen that shade. But for Milena skin, I'm keeping everything really fresh and creamy. So we're just blending this cream one. And now to add a little blush. This is a MAC blush, a Glow Play blush. This is almost a texture that's a cross between a powder and a cream. Very, very soft and wearable on the skin. This is in the shade Blush Please. As you can see, I'm using a soft, fluffy brush. It's got kind of an angled shape. I just love these brushes. I have tons of those in my brush belt. So easy to work with when you're doing any kind of sculpting or blush work on the skin. But I'm pressing this into the skin rather than swiping. That's because we've spent time on our foundation and concealer, and I don't want to move any of those products that I've applied beforehand. Blush placement can be tricky, but generally if you smile, then you'll see where the apples of the cheeks naturally rise. That's where you want your first press of the brush to be. You can press in that area and then go back in afterwards and just blend and soften the outside of that blush. Don't worry if it feels like you're going too close to the nose or too far in the outer edges of the face. We're just blending here. Majority of color just to be at the apples of the cheeks and the center of the face. I absolutely love blush. I feel like it really wakes up the face and makes the complexion look super youthful. So now that our blush and contour is applied, I'm just going to mattify the areas in the center of the face where I don't want too much shine. I'm using a really clever product. This is like a mattifying gel by Ray Morris, and what I'm doing with this is just with like a flat synthetic brush, almost like a mini foundation brush. I'm pressing this in those areas. Now this is not a powder, so it's never going to look powdery or heavy on the skin. And it's perfect for those with dry skin or mature skin, just to mattify and take that shine away, keep skin looking fresh and keep everything flattering. I'm really focusing just on the center of the face. I want to keep that beautiful luminosity at the outer edges of the face. As you can see, that instantly takes away the shine. It keeps the skin looking really lovely and natural and fresh. Now, before I put finishing touches to this complexion, I'm going to move on to doing eyes. I've already primed the eyes and I'm going to use a pencil liner now. This is an Armani pencil in shade number 11, and I love this one because it's a really soft, kind of gray toned brown. It's also a kohl pencil, which means it's going to blend out beautifully. What I'm doing here is I'm just sketching right along the lash line, right from the inner part of the eye outwards. Now this is the part where you can kind of be as free as you like. It doesn't matter if it's messy because it's such a beautifully soft pencil that we're going to be able to blend all of those messy lines out afterwards. We want a little bit of extra liner on the outer part of the eye, so I'm going back and forth over the top just to create that little bit more intensity in the outer corners. What I'm also doing with this is I'm sketching a little crease just to give us some definition when the eyes are open. This is such an easy way of creating this eye look, and also using pencils beforehand is going to ensure that everything looks lovely and flattering and creamy. This pretty much works for every eye shape. Even if you have hooded eyes, putting this little bit of pencil here is going to just add some definition when the eyes are open, because we're going to blend and soften this line. So now I'm taking a clean blending brush and I'm just going back and forth over the top of where I've applied that pencil. Like I've said before, we don't want to see any hard lines. What we're doing is creating a little bit of sculpting. Think of this like contouring for the eyes. Your key to blending this look is a soft touch. Even though it's got to be really well blended, you want to use really kind of small and soft motions. The harder you press, the more the product is going to drag on the skin and the more likely it is to look patchy. I'm also going to take some of that pencil underneath the lash line, keeping it quite thin and close to the lash line, but focusing on doing a little bit of extra pencil in this outer part of the eye here. And again, you want to blend and soften those lines. So our pencil is applied, and that is essentially our eye sculpting done. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to set that creamy pencil with a little eyeshadow. This is a very soft kind of gray-brown shadow, and I'm just pressing this in the outer part of the eye. An important thing to remember is the first place that that brush touches is going to pick up the most product. So you want to make sure to keep that place to the outer part of the eye or the lash line. Another important thing to remember when you're doing any eye look is not to drastically move or drag the skin or lift it, because once you let go, then actually it can be a different shape to what you're hoping to achieve. So I make sure that I'm very, very gentle when I hold the eye area so that I can see exactly the shape that I'm creating. A little bit under the lash line too, just to set that pencil. Very small, soft movements just to keep that blending soft and seamless. So what I'm doing now is I'm pressing a little nude shadow into the center of the lid here. Key thing to remember when you're doing this is to press rather than swipe. That way you're going to get the most intense color payoff without having to apply too much product. Another thing to remember is to not cover that little bit of dark definition that we've given the lash line. You want to really keep that in the center of the lid. At this stage, it should look like a little circle here. Then we're going to take a soft, fluffy brush and just blend and soften the edges. Again, just really, really light touches and small circular movements. We're going to kind of diffuse that eyeshadow, and that lightness in the center of the lid is really going to make the eyes pop. I've chosen to use matte shades because I find them more flattering on mature skin. That doesn't mean you can't use shimmer. I would just be careful where you put the shimmer. A little pop of shimmer in the center of the lid or in the inner part of the eye still keeps everything flattering. Also going to take some of that lighter shadow under the brow, on top of the brow bone here. And then with a smaller pencil brush, I'm just taking it in the inner tear duct here, which really is a really nice way to brighten the eyes. And it's great if you've got deep set or close together eyes, as it helps to widen the appearance of the eyes. At this point, I'm going to take a deeper shadow on a little angle brush. I'm going to use this to add a little definition along the lash line. So if you look down for me, I am pressing almost right over the root of the lashes, just to keep that very, very thin and add soft definition. Once that's on, you can go back in with your eyeshadow brush and just kind of blend and soften. As I applied the shadow, I didn't wing out the shape, but as I'm blending, I'm slightly dragging that darker shadow out, and that's going to help to really elongate the eyes. You can also add a little touch of this in the outer corner at the bottom lash line too. This is a great tip for people that don't feel confident in using a liquid liner. It adds definition to the eyes with no hard lines, and you don't need a steady hand. If you are wanting to achieve a more dramatic or a more smoky eye, then you can go a little bit heavier with that liner and just blend outwards. The key is that we have our pencil on beforehand, which is going to make a lovely starting point, and then you can really decide how dramatic or how natural you want the look to be. I always like to go around the edges with a clean blending brush, or even your little blending brush that you use for concealer. This just helps to clean everything up and make sure that it's beautifully blended. I'm going to line in the waterline now with a nude eyeliner. I prefer to use a nude pencil to brighten the waterline as opposed to white, because I just find it a little bit more realistic and softer. It also helps to neutralize any redness in that waterline and just make eyes look a little bit more awake. I'm going to apply some individual lashes now, and that is how I'm going to really elevate this eye look. I am using my No Lash lash, and I love these because as well as being lightweight and natural looking, they come in various different lengths. I'm using the second to shortest length on Milena. Best way to apply this is with eyes looking down. Just taking one of those lashes and popping it in the outer part of the eye. Now we don't need many lashes for this look, and it's completely optional. You can wear just mascara if you prefer. I just love the idea of creating a little bit more of a feathered lash. I always like to start at the outer part of the eye first, leaving a little gap of 1 millimeter or 2 in between each lash, and work my way to the center. You can also just pop 2 or 3 lashes on the outer part of the eye. I'm probably going to use 8 or 10 little individual lashes per eye in total. To keep lashes looking as realistic as possible, I use a variety of lengths. I've gone for the second to shortest length all the way along the lash line, and then as we get to the inner corner where the lashes would naturally be shorter, I've gone for the shortest length and just popped 2 little ones in there. Long lashes in the inner part of the eye are often a giveaway that they're false, and we want these looking as realistic as possible. Now I'm going to apply lots of mascara. Whether you're wearing individual falsies, full strip falsies, or no falsies at all, a lash is really going to help to lift and open the eye. So I like to spend a little bit of time on my mascara application. I'm using the Estée Lauder Double Wear Mascara. This is a great one if you're worried about transfer around the eyes and you don't want your makeup to smudge, or you just need it to last all day long. It's actually a tubing mascara, which means it can only be dissolved with water. That means the natural oils that are found around the eye area are not going to break down that mascara and make it smudge, which makes it a perfect choice if you have hooded eyes or any creases around the eye area. Now I'm using the tip of the mascara wand to get the product onto the lashes. You know that little blob of mascara that comes out when you first pull that wand out of the tube? I like to keep it on there because it really helps to get the most amount of product onto the lashes. Once I've done that, I then use the width of the brush to comb through and separate the lashes so that they're really evenly coated in mascara from root to tip. The way you angle your lashes can slightly change your lash look. For this look, I really want to frame the eyes, so I'm angling the lashes in the inner part of the eye inwards, the middle part of the eye goes straight up, and then the outer part of the eye go outwards. But if you wanted to create a more feline look, you can angle all your lashes outwards. So beautiful. I love mascara. It would definitely be my desert island product. I feel like if you have good skin and great lashes, then sometimes you just don't need anything else. I'm going to do bottom lashes too. I just love the way that bottom lashes frame the eyes. Milena actually has beautifully long bottom lashes, so I want to make the most of them and see them all. Another benefit of these long bottom lashes is that they're going to make our top lashes look even more natural. So sometimes, especially as we age, we can lose the natural fullness of the lashes, or they can develop gaps. I'm going to show you a tiny little trick now of how I fill in those gaps. I'm just taking a tiny little brush, an angle brush will do, or a liner brush, or even a lip brush, and just taking a little bit of a soft black shadow, and then anywhere where I want a little bit more lash definition, I'm just painting these tiny little cheek lashes under the lash line, which are going to give the effect of shadowing and make the eye look like it has more lashes. A makeup artist once said to me that if you don't get a blob of mascara on the skin when you're doing a mascara, then you've not applied enough. And I absolutely loved that. I actually like to use my concealer brush or a dry eyeshadow brush if there's any smudges of mascara on the skin. Once it's fully dry, just to kind of brush it off, and you'll be surprised how easily you're able to remove it. Now we have this beautiful eye look. I'm so excited to frame Milena's beautiful face with brows. As you can see, Milena's natural brows are quite fine and a little bit shorter than her eye. So I really want to elongate and add a little bit of volume, which also adds to the youthful look of this makeup. I'm going to use Soap Brows for this. Soap Brows is a brand that make a soap that's designed to hold brows in place and add a little bit of volume, but you really can use any soap. Even Pear's soap works beautifully well to do this trick. Use a little bit of fixing spray. The only thing to consider is that you don't want to use a soap or a fixing spray that's moisturizing because it doesn't have as good a hold. I'm just taking my spoolie and then combing that through the brows. Now, if you see any residue or extra product that you don't want on the skin, you can go back over the top and just smooth everything out with a brush or a finger. But generally speaking, this is a really easy and effective way to hold brows in place. What it also does, which is super important for Milena, is it gives us a base that is actually on the skin, so that our product that we use on top has got something to stick and grab to and is going to look more realistic. That is exactly the reason I'm applying it before applying any of the brow sculpting. Now, to achieve the most realistic looking brows, I like to use a couple of different shades because we really want to replicate the hair-like strokes to keep them looking soft and real. First shade I'm going for is a very pale, almost grey blonde. This is a shade called Ice Queen by a small brand called Brow Jam, and it's actually the most realistic I've found for very, very blonde people or those with grey hair. It's almost like a pale, soft taupe. If you can't get your hands on this one, then a soft taupe eyeshadow does the trick beautifully well too. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting at the outer part of the brow. I am going to elongate that brow and just using my little angle brush in very small kind of hair-like strokes. And this is a gradual process. You don't want to be doing this in one line. You want to be taking your time and a soft touch just to go back in and really draw in these little hair-like strokes. Anywhere that the brow naturally has hair, I'm trying not to go over too much because I don't want to darken those areas. I just want to add extra volume to the areas where there is no hair naturally. Bringing the brows a little closer together also helps to add to this full and youthful look. The brows should essentially start, if you hold something straight, up from the corner of the nose to the corner of the eye. That is where your brow should start. So I'm bringing Milena's brows a little closer together. And it's important to remember that age-old saying of brows are not twins, they're sisters, which means they don't have to be identical. The most important thing is to just check that they're looking balanced. So what I'm doing here is I'm just almost kind of straightening this line until we go up to the arch of the brow and then it comes back down again. So this brow is going to be built in stages. So now I've applied that first step, that soft taupe color. I'm just using my spoolie to comb back through and soften any hard lines. This is where you can take a step back and have a look and just see if there are any gaps or any extra areas that need filling in. Now we're moving into the second step of creating these natural looking gorgeous brows. I'm using a little angle brush with a bit of dark taupe eyeshadow. Now the reason I'm using eyeshadow for this rather than another brow pomade is that eyeshadow is gonna stick really well to the creaminess of the brow pomade, and then it's gonna allow us to add definition and really create those hair-like looking strokes. Any areas where there's no natural hair growth are especially important to go over with the shadow. It's going to make sure that the brows are matte, which means they're not going to catch the light and you're not going to see any gaps no matter which way the head turns. Now, when creating a natural looking brow, I always like the inner part of the brow to be the area that's the softest and the most sparse. And as we get to the outer part of the brow, that's where we can add a little bit more depth, which is exactly what I'm doing with the shadow. Now, if that shape that you're creating goes a little awry, don't worry too much as we're going to clean up afterwards with a concealer. Now, I am slightly lifting Milena's natural brow arch here because I find that it really helps to kind of lift the whole eye look if you just define that arch slightly more. Now, it's not always necessary, but what I'm doing here is I'm just taking the same concealer that I used under the eyes on a smaller, more precise brush. And I'm going to use this to clean up the edges. Generally speaking, I prefer not to do this along the bottom of the brow. I just find it gives too much of a clean and defined brow. This is going to be a soft, natural cleanup rather than making those brows look too perfect. And now I'm going to move on to lips. I'm going to softly blot this beautiful lip mask off of Milena's lips before I apply some liner. I am using the By Terry lip liner in the shade Perfect Nude because this really is the perfect nude for so many skin tones. I'm angling my pencil so that the end of it is facing the outer part of the mouth. That's going to allow us to achieve the cleanest lines with the most control. Little tip if you want to slightly overdraw your pout is to start at the corners of the mouth. Then you're going to ensure that you're not going too far over and then need to correct any mistakes in this part here. I generally like to go over the natural lip line a little bit more around this area of the Cupid's bow. I just find it's a softer, more feminine looking shape than overdrawing the whole lip line. No matter what color lipstick you're going for, I really love to apply a natural looking liner, a nude tone or a taupe, just to sculpt out the shape first. I mean, hasn't Milena got the most beautiful lips? I know I'm asking you guys like you're a live audience, but I'm sure you'll be saying yes at home. So gorgeous. I'm using this pencil to give a little bit more intensity to the outer part of the lips here. This is almost like a subtle bit of lip contouring, just to allow us to make the inner part of the mouth look even more full. Now I'm applying some of this beautiful Valentino lipstick. This is a lovely rosy pink. Using a lip brush, just because when I'm doing other people's makeup, I feel like I have a lot more control. But I have to admit, I rarely would ever use a lip brush when I'm doing my own makeup. Totally fine to use that lipstick straight from the bullet. I'm going to pop a little gloss on top and I'm going to share with you guys a trick so that your gloss doesn't bleed out. What I like to do is just take that gloss and pop it just in the center of the mouth, not too close to the outer edge of the lip. That way you achieve the illusion of a glossy looking pout, but actually it's got a little bit more staying power. Now taking a step back and looking at this, now that the lips are done, I feel we need a touch more color on the cheeks. That is the beauty of makeup, is that you can go back in, you can take things away, and you can add as and when you feel like this is just going to bring the face to life even more. Using the same blush as before and just pressing into the apples of the cheeks, upwards and outwards. Now I'm going to add just a little touch of highlighter to the skin. This is such a beautiful, soft, flattering highlight. This is the Westman Atelier Super Tinted Loaded Highlight in the shade Poda Rose. I am just pressing this with a fingertip just at the very top of cheekbones. And you can see that that gives a really kind of soft candlelit glow. Now the secret to keeping your highlighter flattering is not bring it too close to the eye. We really want to just press it onto the very top of cheekbones. So now Milena's going to have her hair done and we will show you guys the finished look. So this is my everyday makeup look, but elevated. It's really easy to recreate this look, and it's all about attention to detail, taking a step back to really look at your individual features and just put touches of makeup where needed. Super easy to dial up the drama with this look by adding a dark kohl to the waterline or a little extra highlight to cheekbones. This is my interpretation of ageless beauty, and I can't wait to see your recreations.